This window from these windows to the past, through veils of limitation, will show you a glimmer of the light of Baha'u'llah. 2 years before his ascension, Baha'u'llah, in the 11th leaf of the Words of Paradise or Kalamat-e Ferdowsiyeh, revealed these exalted words, quote, "In truth, the station of this revelation transcendeth the station of whatever hath been manifested in the past or will be made manifest in the future." End of quote. This is an awe-inspiring statement. I like to paraphrase it. His station is above all the manifestations of the past and future. In the Kitab-e-Iqan revealed 3 decades earlier, referring to the messengers of God, he states, quote, "They all abide in the same tabernacle, soar in the same heaven, are seated upon the same throne, utter the same speech, and proclaim the same faith." End of quote. Superficially, to a novice, it could appear that maybe these 2 statements are contradictory. However, deeper study of Baha'i writings proves both statements valid without a trace of contradiction. The Guardian states, quote, "To strive to obtain a more adequate understanding of the significance of Baha'u'llah's stupendous revelation is the first obligation and the object of the constant endeavor of each of its loyal adherents." End of quote. As stated over and over by Mr. David Hoffman, the retired member of the Universal House of Justice, the only way to understand the station of Baha'u'llah is by reading the writings of the Guardian, because he is the expounder of the faith of Baha'u'llah. In my humble opinion, the dispensation of Baha'u'llah, a chapter in the world order of Baha'u'llah, should be the very first. To comprehend the station of Baha'u'llah, one should understand the station of the Bab. The Guardian writes in the world order of Baha'u'llah, the chief motive for editing and translating Nabil's narrative, the Dawnbreakers, was to enable the believers in the West to grasp the station of the Bab. He was not just a forerunner. He himself bears witness in the Persian Bayan that he is the object of all prophets of the past. Baha'u'llah mentions in Kitab-e-Iqan the prophecy of one of the Imams that, quote, "Knowledge is 27 letters. All that the prophets have revealed are 2 letters thereof. No man thus far hath known more than these 2 letters, but when the Qa'im shall arise, he will cause the remaining 25 letters to be made manifest." End of quote. Then he states, quote, "Behold, from this utterance, how great and lofty is his station, his rank excelleth that of all the prophets, and his revelation transcendeth the comprehension and understanding of all their chosen ones." End of quote. In the world order of Baha'u'llah, Shoghi Effendi, describing the eventful life of the Bab, specifically mentions the miraculous tragedy of his martyrdom and the magic of his influence on the most eminent and powerful among his countrymen. He is referring to the erudite Wahid, the matchless Hujjat, the learned Dayan, and the powerful governor of Isfahan, Manucher Khan. You might have heard the names Wahid, Hujjat, or Manucher Khan, but since Dayan might be new to you, I wish to share his story with you. We go back to 1848, one of the historic years in the ministry of the Bab. You remember? In that year the conference of Badash took place, and the Bab was interrogated in Tabriz and bastinadoed. Well, it was early in that year when the crafty Prime Minister Haji Mirza Aghasi decided to transfer the Bab from the fortress of Maku to the more strict fortress of Shahrokh for total isolation. As the history testifies, it did not work out that way. Moving the Bab brought great surprises to the Prime Minister, one of which was the conversion of Mirza Asadullah, who was honored by the Bab with the title of Dayan, meaning one who rewards or judge. Dayan was a prominent official in the nearby town of Khoy. He had the mastery of 5 languages, which was unusual in that area. His attitude towards the Bab was hostile, with strong denunciation of his cause. Not too long after the Bab's transfer to that fortress, Dayan saw a dream. He kept it concealed, but it prompted him to write a letter to the Bab. Before he wrote the letter, he concentrated on 2 verses of Quran, and then he wrote to the Bab that I have conceived 3 things in my mind and request that you reveal their nature to me. The Bab answered in his own handwriting the dream and what it was all about, and the 2 verses exactly. This precision converted him immediately with such an unshakable certitude that he refused to use a horse when climbing the steep mountain to attain the presence of the Bab. There he gave the Bab his unconditional allegiance. His father was in Tehran, and he was a very close friend of the Prime Minister. Dayan's father wrote to the Prime Minister and mentioned his disappointment in him, the way he had been running the affairs of the country, and stated how his own precious son had joined the Bab's faith with unusual fervor. This and similar happenings were the factors that disturbed the Prime Minister, so he ordered for the Bab's transfer to the provincial capital of Tabriz, which is another interesting event, again showing the victory of the cause. You see, from the beginning of this faith to the present, every crisis has ended into a victory for the faith. After the martyrdom of the Bab, the believers of that and the neighboring province sought guidance from Dayan, and they were called Dayaniyeh. Dayan, like 24 other prominent Babis elsewhere, had the delusion that he was him whom God shall make manifest, the station of Baha'u'llah, until he attained the presence of Baha'u'llah in Baghdad, when his eyes were opened and he repented. However, shortly after that, through the order of the half-brother of Baha'u'llah, the timid and jealous Mirza Yahya, Dayan was put to death. This half-brother wished to eliminate all who claimed authority, including Baha'u'llah. Of course, we know the Blessed Beauty had the protection of Providence. Now we go back to the station of the Bab. Listen to Baha'u'llah's tribute to the Bab after being exiled to Baghdad. Quote, "We stand life in hand, wholly resigned to his will, that perchance through God's loving kindness and grace, this revealed and manifest letter," meaning Baha'u'llah, "may lay down his life as a sacrifice in the path of the primal point, the most exalted word," meaning the Bab. End of quote. By hearing the next few quotations from Baha'u'llah, you could come to your own conclusion about the station of the Bab. In a tablet addressed to Maryam or Mary, Baha'u'llah's sister-in-law, who nursed his wounds and illness right after his release from the infested Shahrokh, he wrote from Baghdad, quote, "The wrongs which I suffer have blotted out the wrongs suffered by my first name," meaning the Bab, "from the tablet of creation." End of quote. In another place he states, quote, "Energies which manifested themselves in the plenitude of their glory when the ancient beauty appeared in the year 60, meaning 1844, in the person of Ali Muhammad the Bab." End of quote. I will repeat. When the ancient beauty, meaning Baha'u'llah, appeared in 1844 in the person of Ali Muhammad the Bab. Now you realize that the Bab was not just a forerunner or a luminary with prophetic powers, and the term twin manifestations as one of the unique features of this faith is comprehended better. Also, why is it that the two stars on the Baha'i ring symbol of the greatest name as designed by Abdul Baha, signifying the Bab and Baha'u'llah, are identical? Manifestations die to be reborn in the next. About his own station, Baha'u'llah states, quote, "The purpose underlying all creation is the revelation of this most sublime, this most holy day, the day known as the Day of God in His books and scriptures, the day which all the prophets and their chosen ones and the holy ones have wished to witness." End of quote. Why the prophets wished to witness the Day of God is well explained by the Guardian, who states, quote, "Does not a child succumb in the youth, and the youth in the man, yet neither the child nor youth perishes?" End of quote. The child has the potential capacity and powers which only upon maturity will become manifest. A child would yearn to see him or herself as a mature adult. The same principle applies to the prophets and the chosen ones who yearn to live in the day of God when the manifestation of God appears in its most sublime station. Let us go to the writings of the Bab as quoted by Shoghi Effendi and see his recognition of the station of Baha'u'llah. The Bab writes in the Persian Bayan, quote, "Of all the tributes I have paid to him who is to come after me, the greatest is this, my written confession, that no words of mine can adequately describe him, nor can any reference to him in my book, the Bayan, do justice to his cause." End of quote. And further he states, quote, "1,000 perusals of the Bayan cannot equal the perusal of a single verse to be revealed by him whom God shall make manifest. The Bayan deriveth all its glory from him whom God shall make manifest." End of quote. Now is a good time for a story about a verse from Baha'u'llah. After the poisoning of Baha'u'llah by his half-brother, which caused the shaking of his hand, he rarely wrote any of his tablets. It is an inspiring story about the father of Mr. Adib Tahirzadeh, the member of the Universal House of Justice and the author of many valuable books. His name was Haji Muhammad Tahir Maulmiri, who lived a full life of 102 years. As a young man, he attained the presence of Baha'u'llah in Akka and had the bounty of staying for 9 months. While in Akka, he told Baha'u'llah's secretary Mirza Aghajan to mention his request to Baha'u'llah for a tablet or only a few words in his own handwriting, since he had heard that the Bab had stated that should any of his followers live during the days of Baha'u'llah, they should try to obtain a tablet a line or even a word in his own handwriting, because such a possession would be superior to anything else. Mirza Agha Jan refused to give this message to Baha'u'llah on the grounds that he had not taken the pen since he was poisoned. One day when Haji was at the presence of Baha'u'llah, the Blessed Beauty told him that he had written a tablet for him in his own handwriting and that he would receive it. Another time, Haji, now more assertive, gave the names of some other believers and asked if a tablet could be revealed for them as well. A little later, Baha'u'llah stated that a tablet was revealed for each of those people, but they would be sent to him after his departure. He returned to his hometown of Yazd and expected any day that he would receive that very special tablet. After a while, the tablet arrived in a package. You can feel the palpitation of his heart that one of them might be that special tablet which Baha'u'llah had exceptionally revealed for him. The friends whose names had been given all gathered and received their tablets one by one. Each one kissed it and treasured it. Now you put yourself in place of Haji. There is only one tablet left, but there are two people. Well, his wasn't there. The rest were all in the handwriting of Baha'u'llah's secretary. I would have died from disappointment. Maybe tears rolled down Haji's cheeks. Are you thinking maybe he should send a message and remind Baha'u'llah? No, not Haji. He was a firm believer who never doubted Baha'u'llah. Sometimes later, when Haji's cousin went to Akka, Baha'u'llah sent a message of assurance that Haji would receive that tablet. Number of years passed. Haji, slightly heartbroken, but confident, continued his fervent and overzealous teaching activities in Yazd until, because of danger, he was forced to leave the city. In the middle of that unforgettable night, as he was going to mount his donkey, a Baha'i woman approached him and gave him a tablet in the handwriting of Baha'u'llah. She said, 24 years ago, when a believer returned from Baghdad, he gave this tablet to me and said Baha'u'llah told him that the recipient would be found later. Imagine. This tablet was written for him when Haji was a child. Later on, Abdul Baha confirmed that this was the tablet Baha'u'llah had specifically revealed for Haji. Haji never doubted Baha'u'llah. That is the covenant. We can feel sad or disappointed if things do not go our way, but we must not permit the seed of doubt about the power and infallibility of Baha'u'llah ever to enter our minds. I know you like more stories, but we have to go back to the subject. Stories help to show the power of Baha'u'llah. To me, each one is like a miracle. One quotation earlier was read from Baha'u'llah, which stated that, quote, the purpose underlying all creation is the revelation of this most sublime, this most holy day, end of quote. The Guardian, the expounder of the faith, sums it all up in a dramatic panorama called the evolution of the majestic process of divine revelation. In his message of May 1953 at the launching of the 10-year crusade, he wrote this, which I paraphrase. At the dawn of Adamic cycle, the tree of divine revelation was planted by the hand of providence in the soil of divine will. It was nurtured through the light and heat of prophets such as Moses, Jesus, Zoroaster, and Muhammad, and watered by the blood of countless martyrs. Now we are talking about the Adamic or prophetic cycle. The tree brought forth its branches, leaves, blossoms, and fruit. Now prophetic cycle is closing. The fruit was the declaration of the Bab in 1844 in Shiraz, a fruit which belongs neither to the east nor to the west. Listen carefully how Baha'u'llah appears. Grinding of the sacred seed of this fruit in the mill of adversities for 6 years, that's the ministry of the Bab, yielded its oil with his martyrdom on July 9, 1850 in Tabriz. Then, in the darkness of the Siahchal of Tehran, this oil was ignited by the hand of Providence. Baha'u'llah was created. How awesome, how matchless to summarize 6,000 years and tell us that Baha'u'llah is the essence and the culmination of all revelations of the past. He is not just another prophet. He is the supreme manifestation and the inaugurator of the Day of God. Isn't it sufficient for his supreme station that an independent manifestation, the Bab, appeared just to pave the way for his coming? Let us go to the words of the Guardian expounding on the first quotation, which I repeat, quote, "In truth, the station of this revelation transcendeth the station of whatever hath been manifested in the past or will be made manifest in the future." End of quote. Also, you recall the quote from the Guardian who stated, "It is the first obligation of every believer to obtain a better understanding of the station of Baha'u'llah." The Guardian states that the revelation of Baha'u'llah is more than a further stage in a chain of progressive revelations or even the culmination of the prophetic cycle, but I quote, "rather as marking the last and the highest stage in the stupendous evolution of man's collective life on this planet." End of quote. He goes on to state that the golden age of the Baha'i era should be regarded, as far as this planetary life is concerned, as the furthermost limits in the organization of human society. This is rather overwhelming, so I repeat. The golden age of the Baha'i era should be regarded, as far as this planetary life is concerned, as the furthermost limits in the organization of human society. Further, he states, as an individual after the stage of attaining maturity continues to progress and develop, so shall the human society, but it reaches maturity only once. As I understand it, maturity comes only once to mankind, and so does the supreme manifestation. Now we know why the Universal House of Justice in the Rizwan message of 1990 called Baha'u'llah the most precious being ever to draw breath on this planet. In process of growth of mankind, from tribe life, Islam stressed the value and significance of nationhood. And now we are at the verge of the highest watermark in collective life of human society, one planet becoming one homeland. Abdul Baha makes it clear that in the next 500,000 years of the Baha'i cycle, all the manifestations will be under the shadow of the ancient beauty. He states that not centuries, but ages must pass away before the day star of truth shines again in its midsummer splendor. Why more manifestations? Because Baha'u'llah states in a tablet revealed in Adrianople, quote, "Know verily that the veil hiding our countenance had not been completely lifted. We have revealed ourselves to a degree corresponding to the capacity of the people of our age. Should the ancient beauty be unveiled in the fullness of his glory, mortal eyes would be blinded by the dazzling intensity of his revelation." End of quote. The Guardian states, quote, "The fundamental principle which constitutes the bedrock of Baha'i belief, the principle that religious truth is not absolute but relative, that divine revelation is orderly, continuous, and progressive, and not spasmodic or final." End of quote. I will repeat it. The fundamental principle which constitutes the bedrock of Baha'i belief, the principle that religious truth is not absolute but relative, that divine revelation is orderly, continuous, and progressive, and not spasmodic or final. How exciting it is to realize that this dispensation is the fulfillment of the prophecy, quote, "the day which shall not be followed by night." End of quote. The Bab states that the day is the life of a prophet on this earth, and the night is the period between his death to the time of the next manifestation. During the night, only the luminaries shine. In this day of God, the light of Baha'u'llah will continue to shine through his covenant and is the source of unity and survival of mankind. This covenant, with its twin interpreters Abdul Baha and Shahrokh Effendi, is unsurpassed and unparalleled in the history of religion. It is one of the glorious features of this revelation and overshadows and protects another unique feature, namely the divinely ordained administrative order. You see, the house of justice was not planned by the elders of this faith. It was ordained by the pen of Baha'u'llah in the Kitab-e-Aqdas in 1873. Such a system is beyond comparison with the present or past man-made systems, with their inherent faults of abuse of power and corruption. Before I tell you the last story, I wish to bring these 3 points to your attention. These are all made by the Guardian. First point is that Baha'u'llah, in spite of the overwhelming intensity of his revelation, should never be identified as the same as God. Second point is that there is far, far greater distance separating the Guardian from Abdul Baha than there is between Abdul Baha and Baha'u'llah. The third point is that Abdul Baha is a perfect mirror, reflecting the light of Baha'u'llah. Friends, on this weighty subject, you heard quotations from the 3 central figures and the Guardian's explanations. Who am I to say anything more other than to repeat the Guardian's expectations, to strive to obtain a more adequate understanding of the significance of Baha'u'llah's stupendous revelation is the first obligation and the object of the constant endeavor of each of its loyal adherents. The following words of Baha'u'llah are the most befitting preamble to the next story. Please listen carefully. It is about our ears and God. Quote, "This is a day whereon human ears have been privileged to hear what he who conversed with God," meaning Moses, "heard upon Sinai. In the medium obligatory prayer, he states, "He is the speaker in the burning bush. What else do we need to hear? The Spirit overshadowing the messengers for the next 5,000 centuries is nothing but the Holy Spirit itself." What a bounty to live in this day, particularly when we hear Baha'u'llah stating, quote, "The soul of every prophet of God, of every divine messenger, had thirsted for this wondrous day." End of quote. Now the last story. Sayyid Mehdi Esfahani was one of the notables of Esfahan who became a believer. As all new believers do and old believers should also do, he tried to eliminate all of his bad habits. The one which was most difficult was drinking alcohol. When friends would smell it on his breath, he, in defense, would say, "This addiction is very difficult to shed. I do it in privacy of my home and harm no one, and besides, I am too lowly a servant for Baha'u'llah to be concerned about my private life." Don't many of us think or say the same? You see, he had accepted Baha'u'llah with his head as a messenger of God for today with a beautiful set of teachings and principles, but had not deepened or understood the station of Baha'u'llah with his heart. He was given the permission to attain the presence of Baha'u'llah, and one day, as he was standing among the other believers and Baha'u'llah was pacing back and forth elaborating various subjects, a thought occurred to Sayyid Mehdi in a flash, that surely Baha'u'llah is a very knowledgeable and great prophet, but he wondered in his mind, what did he mean when he stated he is the sender of the messengers and the revealer of the books? Suddenly, Baha'u'llah interrupted his own words, walked to him, putting his blessed hand on his shoulder, said, "Sayyid Mehdi, it is true. We are the sender of the messengers and the revealer of the heavenly books." Sayyid Mehdi became both transfixed and transformed on the spot. Now, with every fiber of his being, he recognized and accepted the station of Baha'u'llah. Upon his return, friends could no longer smell alcohol on his breath, and when they inquired, he said, "If he could read my mind, he could see my actions. He is everywhere, omnipresent, and knows everything, omniscient." Let us close with a very appropriate prayer from Baha'u'llah on the Day of God.
Magnified be thy name, O my God, for that thou hast manifested the day, which is the King of days, the day which thou didst announce unto thy chosen ones and thy prophets in thy most excellent tablets, the day whereon thou didst shed the splendor of the glory of all thy names upon all created things. Great is his blessedness, whosoever hath set himself towards thee, and entered thy presence, and caught the accents of thy voice. I beseech thee, O my Lord, by the name of him round whom circleth in adoration the kingdom of thy names, that thou wilt graciously assist them that are dear to thee, to glorify thy word among thy servants, and to shed abroad thy praise amidst thy creatures, so that the ecstasies of thy revelation may fill the souls of all the dwellers of thine earth. Since thou hast guided them, O my Lord, unto the living waters of thy grace, grant by thy bounty that they may not be kept back from thee. And since thou hast summoned them to the habitation of thy throne, drive them not out from thy presence through thy loving kindness. Send down upon them what shall wholly detach them from aught else except thee. and make them able to soar in the atmosphere of thy nearness, in such wise that neither the ascendancy of the oppressor nor the suggestions of them that have disbelieved in thy most august and most mighty self shall be capable of keeping them back from thee.